A few weeks ago, I decided to spend a weekend hiking in the mountains. I'm 35 and usually find peace in nature. I hope to escape the chaos of city life, grab my camera and take some nice photos. It started calm. I set out early, the sun rising, casting a warm glow through the trees. I felt excited, snapping pictures of the light filtering through the pines. After about an hour, I heard something odd. Was it laughter? It echoed lightly, and I thought there might be a family nearby. But when I approached the sound, there was no one in sight. My heart began to race, a feeling of unease creeping in. I brushed it off. The trail looked inviting, and I pressed on, hoping for something to inspire me. Not long after that, I found something strange in the middle of the path. A bright red toy car sat there, so vivid against the pale ground. I picked it up, glancing around for signs of kids or parents. Nothing. Just the quiet woods. My unease deepened, but I decided to leave it alone. I didn't want to mess with something that didn't belong to me. The air felt heavy as I walked away, the shadows around me growing longer. Then I stumbled upon something even weirder. In the mud were faint sketches, like little hands had pressed into the ground. They almost looked like faces. I leaned in closer for a picture, but something chilled my spine. I couldn't quite make out the shapes. My instincts told me to turn back, but I shook it off again. It was just my imagination, I thought. I told myself I was being silly. As I walked deeper into the woods, flickers of shadows danced at the edges of my vision. I hoped to see a deer or something to photograph. Instead, I only saw tall pines and the gentle stream nearby. Suddenly, I heard the giggling again. It sounded close. I spun around, my heart pounding, but the woods were silent. I stood still, waiting for a reply that never came. I felt cold. Who was laughing? Was I imagining it? I took a deep breath and turned to head back. Then I saw the toy car again, exactly where I had first found it. It was impossible. I picked it up one more time, considering tossing it into the nearby stream. As I held it, something brushed against my arm. A light touch, but I saw nothing. My pulse quickened. I wasn't alone. I turned to leave, but the laughter echoed again, this time closer, clearer. I stumbled back down the trail, terrified. When I finally reached my car, I thought, I need to get out of here. It felt like I was being watched the entire way back. Now, I'm home, and I keep wondering, what was in those woods? What was laughing? And will I ever go back? I tried to forget about the forest. I threw my camera bag into the closet and avoided looking at the photos I had taken. The memory of the laughter stuck in my mind, replaying like a bad dream. Days passed, and I focused on work, but something felt off. I had an itch to go back. I told myself I needed closure. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove back to the trailhead, heart racing as I approached. The sun was shining, maybe too bright. I stepped onto the path and felt an odd chill despite the warmth. My footsteps echoed louder than I remembered. The woods seemed almost waiting. As I walked, I kept my eyes peeled for the toy car. It unnerved me, but I hoped to find it again. When I reached the spot where I had first heard the laughter, I paused. Silence enveloped me, making my skin crawl. I was about to turn back when something caught my eye. There, half hidden under a bush, I spotted a small photo. It looked old and faded. I picked it up, heart pounding. It was a picture of a group of children, all smiling and playing in that very forest. Their faces were familiar. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd seen them before. That's when I noticed something else in the corner of the photo. Someone lurked in the shadows behind the kids, a dark figure with no distinct features. I felt a wave of nausea. I dropped the photo and turned to run, but stumbled over something. My heart raced as I stood up. I glanced back, my breath hitching. In the mud, more shapes were pressed into the earth, like the ones I had seen before, but they were clearer now. They appeared almost like handprints, but they twisted unnaturally. Fingers splayed as if trying to grab something. Panic surged through me. I wanted to leave, but the forest felt alive. The air was thick with tension. Then I heard it again. The laughter, echoing through the trees, playful and mocking, making my blood run cold. I took off down the path, But something felt different this time. The trail was wrong. Where it had seemed clear before, now branches reached out toward me, like arms trying to pull me back. I struggled to keep my head. I reached the clearing, my gaze darting around for my car. I spotted it in the distance, but it felt farther away than before. My feet pounded against the ground, adrenaline coursing through me. The laughter grew louder, almost jubilant, surrounding me in a disorienting chorus. That's when I heard a voice, a whispering giggle next to my ear, sweet, yet sinister. "Come and play," it said. I froze, terror gripping me. The world spun, shadows stretching all around. I pushed myself to the edge of the woods, finally breaking free into the sunlight. I didn't stop until I reached my car. With shaking hands, I fumbled to start it. As the engine roared to life, I glanced back at the trees. They loomed, silent now, but filled with secrets. I drove home, heart still racing. I don't think I'll ever go back. But the question remained. Who were those children? And what lurked in the forest waiting to play? The next few days felt like a blur. I couldn't shake the unease that settled into my bones. Work didn't distract me. It only made the lingering questions worse. I couldn't concentrate. The memory of that photo haunted me, and the eerie laughter echoed in the back of my mind. I tried to dig deeper into the children I had seen. I started by researching local history, but the internet offered nothing. I called a few neighbors, hoping they had stories to share. Most didn't recognize the faces from the photo. One elderly woman, however, seemed to know something. Her voice trembled on the other end, and she asked me to come by. That evening, I knocked on her door, anxiety swirling in my gut. She opened it slightly, peering out with wary eyes. "Come in," she said quietly. Her house smelled of old books and something else. Something sweet, but unsettling. "Did you see this?" I showed her the photo, trembling as I handed it to her. Her eyes widened in recognition, and she took a step back. "The children," she whispered, almost to herself. "They were special." She quickly looked around as if afraid someone would hear. "Their laughter, it still echoes in these woods. It's never ended." My heart raced. "What happened to them? Who are they?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "Many years ago there was an accident. Some say their spirits never left. That they still play." Her voice lowered, a tremor running through it. "But it's not innocent. Something watches. Something that toys with them." I felt cold. She spoke like she believed it. I couldn't shake the fear that I had stumbled into something much bigger than I was prepared for. "What do you mean?" I pressed. "They're drawn to strangers. They like to play games." Her eyes darted to the window. "If you hear their laughter, it's already too late." A knot formed in my stomach. I didn't want to believe her, but my mind flashed back to the laughter in the woods, followed by that whispering voice. I needed more information. What should I do? How do I make sure I'm safe? "There are ways," she said, grave. "Find the old tree at the edge of the clearing. It will guide you, but heed its warning. The games are tempting, but they might not end well." I thanked her and fled her house, fear buzzing in my ears. My thoughts raced as I drove home, the image of the old tree forming in my mind. I felt an undeniable pull. I had to go back. I needed answers. But that night, as I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. I thought about the lives those children once had, and what happened to them in that forest. The laughter still lingered in my ears, and I knew I couldn't ignore it for much longer. Then, just as I was starting to drift off, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I read the text. "You're invited to play." Chills crept down my spine. I couldn't tell if this was a prank or something more sinister. But I felt something shift inside me. The urgency had returned. I didn't know if I was ready, but one thing was certain. I had to find out what was really happening in those woods. And maybe, just maybe, I would uncover the truth behind the laughter. The next morning, I decided to follow the old woman's advice. The sun was only just breaking over the horizon, casting pale light through my window. Something felt different today, like I was walking on the edge of a blade. I parked my car at the edge of the woods, the trees towering ominously before me. I gripped the steering wheel as I took a few deep breaths, trying to muster the courage to step outside. I remembered the laughter. The echo of those children's voices still sent shivers through me. But I couldn't turn back now. Once I entered the woods, the world felt eerily quiet. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. I kept my eyes peeled for the old tree. It was supposed to guide me, but I had no idea what I was looking for. After what felt like hours, I finally saw it. The tree stood apart from the others, gnarled and twisted, with roots that seemed to claw at the earth. Its bark was dark and textured, like ancient skin. I approached it cautiously, feeling a strange warmth radiating from its core. As I reached out to touch it, a sudden breeze whipped through the clearing. Leaves rustled violently, and I heard the laughter again, this time closer. It was high-pitched and playful, sending my heart racing. I turned, scanning the trees around me. Nothing but shadows. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Is anyone there?" The laughter abruptly stopped. An unsettling silence fell over me. I stepped back from the tree, feeling foolish for talking to the empty woods. Just then, I noticed something glimmering at the base of the tree. Bending down, I brushed aside the leaves and found an old, rusted toy, an intricately carved wooden figure of a child in mid-laugh. My pulse quickened. It couldn't have been there before. I picked it up, feeling its rough texture against my palm. At that moment, a chill cut through the air. I felt the hair on my arms stand up. I turned to leave but found myself frozen. The laughter returned, this time surrounding me. It rose in volume, echoing around the clearing like a sinister melody. "Please, leave me alone," I muttered, panic swelling inside me. The laughter morphed into whispers, wrapping around my thoughts, teasing me with half-formed words I couldn't quite catch. "Come play," one voice called. "Stay with us," another echoed. I turned back to the tree, my instincts screaming at me to run. I remembered the old woman's warning. I shouldn't have engaged. Something was toying with me. Suddenly the laughter began to fade, and I felt an overwhelming urge to follow it. My feet moved before I could think. I raced deeper into the woods, heart pounding. I didn't know where I was going, but something pulled me forward. Then everything went dark. The ground seemed to shift beneath me, and I stumbled, falling hard on the forest floor. When I looked up, the clearing had vanished, and shadows loomed overhead. A small figure darted past the trees, giggling madly, and I realized with a jolt I was no longer alone. I struggled to my feet, mind racing with questions. Who were they? What did they want? And most importantly, how was I going to escape this nightmare? That's when I saw it. Another figure standing by the twisted tree, watching me. But this one wasn't a child. It was something else entirely. Something that filled the air with fear and uncertainty. I stared at the figure, my breath catching in my throat. It was tall and shadowy, its outline shifting like smoke against the dim light. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body felt heavy and frozen. It was as if the very air around me had turned thick, wrapping around my limbs like chains. The figure moved slightly, and I caught a glimpse of something sparkling in its hand. A small, sharp object. My instincts kicked in, and I finally found my legs. I backpedaled, stumbling over the roots and debris. I could hear the laughter again, but it was different now. Deeper, more sinister, weaving in and out, taunting me. "Come play with us," a voice called, eerily melodic. I turned and ran. I didn't stop to think about where I was going. I bolted down a narrow path, weaving through trees that seemed to loom closer with every step. Branches snapped behind me, and I felt the breath of something hot and heavy on my neck. I glanced back. The shadow was pursuing me, gliding silently like it didn't care about the obstacles in its path. I surged forward, heart racing, desperation clawing at my throat. Then I stumbled into a clearing. The pale light from the sun broke through the canopy above. I looked around, panting heavily, trying to catch my breath. That was when I noticed the ground was littered with broken toys, dolls with missing limbs, rusted swings lying forgotten in the underbrush. My pulse quickened as I recognized them. They were just like the toy I'd found by the tree. "What happened here?" I gasped, horror creeping in as I surveyed the remnants of a playground. The laughter returned, a chorus of ghastly giggles surrounding me again. Panic reared in my chest. I couldn't stay. I had to get out. I turned back toward the path I had come from, but the shadow was there, standing still in the entrance of the clearing. It lifted its arm, revealing the shimmering object in its hand. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just a shadow. It had eyes. Two glowing specks of light that seemed to pierce right through me. I felt sickness settle in my stomach. "Leave me alone," I shouted, backing away. But there was nowhere to go. The laughter rose around me, merging with the sound of my racing heart. Then, without warning, the figure darted toward me, moving impossibly fast. As it crossed the threshold into the clearing, the sun dipped behind the clouds, and darkness swept over everything like a curtain. The temperature dropped, and I shivered uncontrollably. "What do you want?" I cried, desperation spilling over. The laughter twisted into something darker, almost mocking. The figure pointed a long, thin finger at me, and suddenly everything went deafeningly silent. My heart thundered in my ears. I could barely comprehend what was happening when I realized that the shadows around me started to shift. They were alive, swirling and circling, closing in. "Help!" I screamed, but it felt futile, lost in this nightmare. I was surrounded by vibrant fear, and I had no escape. Just then, from the shifting darkness, a whisper broke through, crackling like dry leaves. "Stay with us." It was a plea, a command, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening was only beginning. I had to find a way out, before it became permanent. I was frozen, my eyes locked on the shadowy figure as it took a single step toward me. The air grew colder, restrictively so, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. I could feel the shadows brushing against my skin, creeping closer. Panic surged within. I had to move, and fast. In a burst of adrenaline, I turned on my heel and bolted toward the edge of the clearing. My steps were unsteady on the uneven ground clogged with broken branches and debris. I could still hear the laughter, echoing from all directions, wrapping around me like a noose. It was almost comforting in a sickening way, like a chorus, reminding me I was not alone. As I neared the tree line, something caught my eye. An old, rusted swing set partially concealed by foliage. I skidded to a halt and glanced back. The figure remained at the center of the clearing, unmoving, its eyes still locked onto me. The sight sent another wave of terror crashing down. I realized I needed to find somewhere to hide, somewhere I could catch my breath and think. I darted toward the swing set, ducking behind it. The cold metal felt gritty against my skin. I peered out, half expecting the shadow to follow. Instead, it just stood there, head tilted, listening. I was engulfed in silence again, but not the comfortable kind, the kind that felt like the calm before a storm. Suddenly, a sharp crack rang out from further in the woods. A tree branch snapped. I jumped, heart racing. My mind was racing too. What, or who, else could be out here? I pressed myself harder against the swing set, praying the figure wouldn't move. Then I saw it, a movement through the trees. Not a shadow, but something more tangible. A child. A small girl, no older than 8 or 9, was wandering toward the clearing. She looked innocent enough, her hair flowing freely as she stepped lightly over the branches, a smile on her face. My heart sank. Something felt very wrong. "Come play with me!" she called, her voice sweet and melodic, sending an icy chill down my spine. My instincts screamed for me to stay hidden, but curiosity tugged at me. There was something familiar about her demeanor, like I'd seen her in a nightmare before. The shadow remained in place, but I could see the amusement in its glowing eyes. It seemed to enjoy the little girl's presence. Terror spiraled inside me. "No," I whispered urgently, but the girl didn't seem to hear. She moved closer, the laughter returning in a low, mocking tone. "Please, help us," she said, tilting her head. "Don't be scared." In that moment, I realized she was just like the toys scattered in the clearing, out of place, forgotten. "What happened to you?" I asked, my voice trembling. I barely recognized it as mine. "Everything is fine here. Come play." She extended her hand toward me, her fingers beckoning. It felt wrong. So wrong. I couldn't hold my ground any longer. I glanced at the shadow, which was now slowly advancing toward me. Panic shot through my veins. I had to escape. As I bolted from behind the swing set, a cold grip of air snatched at my heels, but I couldn't let it catch me. I surged forward into the trees, the laughter trailing behind me like a sinister song. But then I remembered the way out, the narrow path I had taken earlier. I could make it if I hurried. But just as I thought I was free, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the trees, and the branches above twisted and snapped ominously. Everything went dark, and I stumbled as the ground seemed to shift beneath me. Then, I heard it again. Laughter. But this time, it was the girl's voice mingling with the shadows, both beckoning me once more. I forced myself to keep running, my breath fogging up in the chill, but deep down, I felt the pull of their call. I was caught between two worlds, the one I knew, and the horrific unknown that lay just ahead. And I still couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened next would change everything. I dashed through the trees, branches scraping against my arms as I stumbled over roots. The laughter faded, replaced by the sounds of the forest, crickets chirping, leaves rustling. I didn't dare stop to listen too long, fearing that if I did, I'd hear the girl's voice rising up again. I pressed on, lungs burning, every instinct screaming for me to keep moving. As I broke through the underbrush, I found myself on a small trail. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating the path like a glowing ribbon in the dark. It seemed familiar, and I thought I might be heading toward the edge of the woods where I'd parked my car. Relief surged within me, but I refused to let my guard down. Halfway down the path, a strange sound pierced the night, a soft, melodic humming. It drew my attention to the left, where the trees grew thicker. I hesitated, curiosity battling with fear. Trying to shake it off, I focused on the path ahead, but the humming swelled, sweet yet unsettling. It was the same tune the girl had sung earlier. Just keep moving, I muttered to myself, reminding myself that I was in control. But each step felt heavier, as if the shadows were reaching out to pull me back. I forced myself to quicken my pace, telling myself I wasn't going to stop until I was back in the safety of my own home. Then came the whispers, urgent and chaotic, overlapping each other like a twisted conversation. "Come play with us," they called, echoing all around me. I glanced back, heart racing, but the path behind me was quiet. The shadow had disappeared, along with the girl. Yet the voices remained, swirling through my mind. "Help us," they moaned again. Suddenly, the ground shifted beneath my feet. I stumbled, nearly falling into a shallow ditch beside the trail. As I regained my balance, I caught sight of something out of place. Old toys scattered, half buried beneath the dirt. A rusted doll with empty eyes stared up at me, its smile frozen in time. It sent chills down my spine as I realized where I was, right back where I'd started, in that cursed clearing. I backed away slowly, breath hitching, until my back hit the trunk of a tree. Panic clawed at me again. I couldn't go back to that clearing. I couldn't let them catch me. A shape shifted just out of my vision, and I spun around in terror. In the dim light, I could barely make out the outline of the girl, standing there at the edge of the clearing, her eyes glowing faintly. A hardened smile spread across her face. "You want to play, don't you?" she taunted, tilting her head as she moved closer. "No! Stay away from me!" I shouted, my voice trembling. My instincts screamed to run, but my feet refused to budge. I was trapped between the safety of the trees and the darkness of the clearing. Then, a sudden, horrendous laughter erupted, echoing through the night. That was when I noticed the shadow again, rising behind her, growing taller, merging with the darkness. Whatever it was, it meant to keep me there. I was stuck. Fighting the urge to scream, I took a deep breath and prepared to sprint back down the trail, anything to escape this nightmare. But the moment I turned, a chilling thought nagged at me. What if the path I had taken wasn't leading me home after all? What if it led me deeper into whatever haunted these woods? I tore myself away from the ghostly girl and ran down the path, fueled by pure adrenaline. Each footfall echoed in my ears, competing with the laughter that faded behind me. I couldn't slow down. I couldn't think. I just had to move. Away from this nightmare. Trees blurred past as I sprinted, eager to escape the oppressive presence of the clearing. But the further I ran, the more disoriented I felt. The forest was an endless maze, each turn only leading me deeper into its clutches. I stumbled over unseen roots and caught my arm on sharp branches. My breath came in ragged gasps, and my chest burned like fire. I knew I couldn't give in to despair. Then I saw it. A glimmer of light ahead. Hope flickered inside me as I pressed on, thinking it might be the glow of my car or maybe a cabin, a person, anyone. I had to reach it. But when I got closer, the light faded and shifted, revealing itself. It wasn't a beacon of safety, but a lantern hanging from a branch, swaying gently as if stirred by an unseen hand. I hesitated, dread creeping back in. The light flickered, casting strange shadows on the ground. I stepped forward, drawn to it despite the icy grip of fear tightening around my heart. Beneath the lantern, I spotted something peculiar. A small wooden box nestled in the underbrush. It looked ancient, its surface worn smooth over time, but it was the markings that caught my attention. They resembled the same symbols I had seen on the old toys in the clearing. Panic twisted my gut as I realized they weren't just childish carvings. They felt like warnings. The whispers returned, urgent and pleading. "Open it! Help us!" I recoiled, shaking my head. "No!" I shouted into the night. "I won't do it!" Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath me, throwing me off balance. I grabbed onto the lantern stand for support, but it felt as if the forest was alive, reacting to my fear. I feared the shadows were closing in again. I didn't want to see the girl's face, those glowing eyes, or the towering shadow lurking behind her. But as I steadied myself, curiosity snaked its way back in. What was this box? What would happen if I opened it? What could possibly be so important that the whispers seemed desperate for my attention? With shaking hands, I brushed away leaves and dirt. The box creaked as I lifted the lid, and a waft of stale air escaped from within. My pulse quickened. Inside, I saw a montage of faded photographs, each depicting different children, their faces twisted in expressions of joy and fear. And there, in the corner, was a scrap of paper with a name scrawled in faded ink. Lila. My heart dropped. "Lila," I whispered. I hadn't been wrong about the girl. Somehow she was connected to this box. Then a gust of wind knocked the lantern to the ground, extinguishing its light. In an instant, I was plunged into darkness, and the whispers turned to screams. I felt the ground beneath me shift again, and something cold grasped my ankle. Desperate, I kicked free and bolted down the trail, my heart racing. I needed to escape. But now the woods felt alive, and every shadow pulsed with a dark intent. All I could think was that I might never get out of these woods alive. I sprinted blindly, branches clawing at my skin, each step tarred with the weight of panic. The laughter from before echoed in my mind again, but this time it morphed into wails. I couldn't tell if they belonged to the girl or something more sinister. The air felt heavier, charged, like the forest was breathing around me, tensely and unevenly. Then I broke through the dense tree line into a small clearing. My heart sank as I realized it was the same clearing where I had first encountered the girl. The toys were still scattered about, forgotten. A chill passed over me as my gaze landed on the swing, swaying gently. No wind rustled the leaves around me. Only a suffocating silence remained, punctuated by the distant echoes of laughter, now muffled. I backed away, but the sensation of being trapped clawed at me. My mind raced with thoughts of the box, those photographs, the name Lila. Why was she so important? What had happened to her? Just then, something caught my eye. A figure at the edge of the clearing. I squinted, straining to make sense of it. A girl, but not the ghostly one from before. This girl looked real, her hair disheveled, her eyes wide. My heart thumped, hope and fear colliding. "Help me," she cried, her voice trembling. I hesitated. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, unsure if she was a trick of my mind or something more. "Lila," she said, breathless. "Please, they want to take me back." A dread settled in my stomach. Was this truly Lila? I took a tentative step forward. "Who wants to take you back?" She pointed toward the shadows that crept from the trees, forming thick, black tendrils that seemed to reach for her. "They won't stop until they have me." The shadows wavered, suffused with a sinister energy. I felt a pull, a compulsion to move closer to Lila, to save her while my instincts screamed at me to run. But before I could act, the shadows coalesced into a figure, towering and ominous. For an instant I was paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend its shape. It reached out a hand toward Lila and she stepped back, terror spreading across her face. "Run! Get away!" she shouted as the darkness followed her. That was all it took. I turned on my heel and darted back into the woods, branches whipping against my skin, tearing at my clothes. My breath quickened, and the weight of dread bore down on me like a leaden shroud. I had to get away from her, from the shadows, from whatever nightmare was unfolding. But the forest shifted again. Paths twisted underfoot as if the trees themselves were reshaping the route. I stumbled, losing my footing on the uneven ground. I was lost, and behind me, the echoing laughter rang out, tauntingly close. I was not alone. Frantically, I scanned my surroundings and spotted a narrow trail veering off to the right. It looked untouched, overgrown, as if few had ventured here in a long time. Desperation propelled me forward, the sounds of chaos following. I had no idea where the path would lead, but I had to take the chance. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the air. I froze, terror washing over me. Something was out there. As I turned to run, a figure stepped from the shadows ahead, blocking my escape. My heart dropped. I was trapped. I stumbled back, my instincts screaming at me to flee in the opposite direction. But there was nowhere to go. The figure stood motionless, its outline somehow familiar yet otherworldly. Sharp angles, and an oppressive aura that twisted the shadows around it. Lila's terrified face flashed in my mind, urging me to do something. "Help us," the shadows whispered, the words drawing nearer like a sinister echo beckoning from every direction. My pulse raced, and I turned instinctively to face the path behind me, only to see the childlike spirits, their faces pallid and twisted in glee, emerging from the trees. "No, stay back," I screamed, swinging sideways toward the figure blocking my path. In that moment, a flicker of resolve sparked inside me. I was not going to let myself be claimed by whatever this darkness was. With a deep breath, I launched forward, tackling through the haze of darkness toward the figure. It stumbled back slightly, and in that fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of something human in its eyes. Fear. I was just close enough. I reached out, clawing at the core of the shadow. It screamed, a horrible, echoing wail that turned the air icy. I didn't think. It was a primal survival instinct as everything fell silent, but the shadows roared to life, surging around me in a chaotic dance. I felt them grasp at my limbs, but I shut my eyes and felt my way toward the old path, retracing my steps. The world turned to refuge as I broke back into the clearing, the last space I had seen with hope. My breath misted in front of me as I emerged, still pulsing with adrenaline. The darkness screeched behind me, the echoes almost victorious in their frustration. Suddenly, the sound of children's laughter bubbled over. Genuine laughter, the clarity of joy piercing through the dread. I turned sharply toward it. Lila stood there at the edge of the trees, glowing softly. "Over here!" she shouted, her voice clear, sounding almost like an invitation. Behind her, shadows pulsed like waves, writhing and screaming silently while trying to lurch toward me. I hesitated as the doppelgangers of the children began to materialize, their eyes wide, but their laughter genuinely joyful. Torn between two worlds, I took a hesitant step toward Lila. There was something magnetic about her plea, the gentle tug of safety. "This way," she coaxed, as tendrils of darkness reached out over the clearing but couldn't breach the light surrounding her. I felt the pull again, but as I backed away, I could sense the embrace of the woods all around me, the shadows twisting and merging together in grotesque forms. It was just me and the choice I had made. As I dashed toward Lila, I felt the cold mouths of grasping, shadowy fingers trying to ensnare me one last time. Then I reached her. A sweeping light enveloped us, and everything became silent as I felt the shadows dissolve into nothingness. I turned back, breathless, clutching Lila's hand, but behind us, the darkness hung just beyond the clearing's edge, whispering and clawing. "You can't leave," it crooned, a chilling echo rattling through the roots. I looked at Lila. She smiled gently, but her eyes held sorrow. "You don't belong here," she told me. "But I can't stay." "Neither can I," I whispered, a wave of understanding crashing over me. The laughter receded, but in its place, I heard echoes of the children's voices growing faint, like they'd simply drifted into the distance. What had happened to them? The details of our escape faded like the mist, dissipating into the air, but as we stepped through the border of light and darkness, I never looked back. We broke through the tree line and burst out into the open, gasping for fresh air, like the world outside had come alive after years of dormancy. I turned to Lila, but she stayed back, halting at the edge. "You have to go. We can't come with you." "What will happen to you?" I asked desperately. "You can't stay after everything." With a hint of a smile, she stepped back, shadows swarming around her once more. "We're all playing until someone finds us. Just promise me, you'll never forget." And just like that, she was gone, consumed by the trees again, laughter fading into oblivion. The weight of her sacrifice settled heavily on my chest. I darted away, stumbling toward my car, as the whispers of the woods melted back into the rustle of leaves. When I reached the vehicle, I slammed the door, my heart racing. I peeled away, the sun painted across the sky as I drove back down the winding road. The forest now stood quiet, but ominous, holding secrets I could never understand. As I headed home, the questions stalked my mind, lonely companions on this haunting journey. I might escape the woods, but I knew I would always carry their echoes deep within. Why had I been drawn there? And what other stories lay beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed? One thing lingered in my mind. Like the fragile laughter of Lila, some stories are best left untold.